Hello, everyone, and welcome to a three-way conversation with some of the people behind Melly Camp, an unconference for people changing the world of work. We have the first one here in London on Friday, December 8th, and I would just like to first introduce, I'm Jen. I'm from the Happy Melly team and the Management 3.0 team. We have Richard Atherton, who is, among other things, a lean change management facilitator, and then we have Ryan Behrman, who, among other things, is a management 3.0 facilitator, and I think definitely we have a lot of excitement around the agile space and playing at work in general, which is an unconference. So first of all, what the heck is an unconference?
Who wants to take this one? Should I?
All right. Go for it, Ryan.
All right, guys. So an unconference is a place where people can come together and decide what they want to learn based on what everyone else has to offer. Come together, vote on what they want to learn based on what's on offer, and then several sessions can run at the same time. And typically, it's not just about the usual conference talks. It's about actually doing, experiencing, practical exercises, tools, games, things that people can take and bring back to their work environment. So other terms that are often used are open space. So a place that people can break out into various spaces within a room or several rooms, and different sessions can run simultaneously at the same time. Anything to add, Richard?
No, that's right. And I know that it was developed out of an insight in people running scientific conferences, and their insight was that a lot of the most valuable conversation happened around in the coffee breaks and in the lunch breaks and around the water cooler, when people were just drawn and attracted to whatever conversation was most prescient. And so the Young Conference really captures that idea, that we run with and we delve into whatever's most pressing and of most interest to that room, in that space, in that moment. And that's what's so exhilarating about being part of an open space and differentiates it from a normal conference.
And since it is for professionals, and I guess for people that manage or coach teams, a lot of it, or are on teams, I guess it can completely vary by day, not just of who's attending the conference or the unconference, but what kind of day before someone had. Because if you have problems at work, you're going to come in and say, I need to work on motivation, or I need to work on my team's communication skills, or damn, that was a really boring meeting yesterday. How can I make it better? So sometimes I guess it's generated by the audience as much as the teachers. And I guess the teachers can be audience members and the audience members can be teachers, right?
That's exactly right. And how often do we sign up to a conference maybe 3 months in advance, and then it comes around to the conference and maybe that agenda isn't so relevant to us anymore. And so we solve that problem. Yeah.
So an unconference is much more relevant in the moment. That's totally cool.
Yeah.
So what makes Melly Camp anything special or different from a scientific unconference, as it were?
Well, the essence of it is the same. So the way that we'll run it is exactly the same as any other open space or unconference. The difference is the content. We do have some themes, so it's not a total free-for-all. We're bounded by the themes and some of the content that is popular or that people want to know more about within either Management 3.0 or within Lean Change Management. That's not to say that there might not be some surprises. So what we're not saying is, if you've got a topic or you've got something you want to share at the unconference, which isn't strictly part of the curricula of either Lean Change or Management 3.0, then absolutely there's an opportunity for you to share that. But we expect the bulk of the content to be in those two domains.
Okay, so let's talk about those domains. Ryan, first, do you want to tell us about what Management 3.0 is to someone that's not heard of it, and what particular topics they could, because it's self-organized, learn about that day?
Absolutely. So Management 3.0 is a very wide spectrum of tools, techniques, practices from the world of management and leadership that people can draw on. Again, like Richard was saying, depending on what your need is in the moment, you have a tool set that you can draw on. it typically looks mostly at the human side of management. So issues of motivation and delegation and empowerment and how to give people good feedback, communication skills, anything that can help people to be better managers and better workers, because we're all managing something, we're all leading something in our work. Even if our title isn't specifically a manager or a leader, we still need to be able to manage ourselves. We need to manage perhaps a team, perhaps our environment that we're working in, even what someone's called managing upwards. So we need to be able to manage our managers. So there'll be, at the conference, there'll be many different aspects and elements of management that people can pick and choose depending on what's, as Richard was saying, what's most relevant to them in the moment, on the day. And there'll be sessions on various of those. So we have session leaders that are experienced facilitators in the world of Management 3.0, as well as people who may have something, as we were saying, to add to that. That's perhaps not currently in the Management 3.0 ecosystem, but might be something that's very fitting to it.
And something that could always be added in the future as we're always expanding our realm of content. And with growing. Yeah, I guess one of the differences with Management 3.0, I can't speak for Lean Change. I know Jason very well, but I don't know all of the content of the brand. I've been to a couple of the practices and played around with some of that, which is awesome. But with Management 3.0, typically when you attend a workshop, it is, or at least the 2-day workshop, you are following a certain pattern of activities, which are then tailored to the discussion and the issues of the different people. But in this way, it could be any activities in a shorter 1-day conference. So what about Lean Change Management? What could people expect to learn about there, Richard?
So Lean Change Management is a co-creation-led, feedback-driven approach to change. So it takes lean and agile ideas and it applies them to the discipline of change management. So we include some of the wisdom and some of the thinking from more traditional approaches, and we infuse it with the ethos and the mindset of lean and agile approaches. In terms of what people can expect, we might look at experiments. That's something that's one of the centerpieces of the lean change approach, is how we set up experiments, how we get to a place of choosing which experiment to run with. We'll also look at culture hacking. We might look at archetypes in the workplace, and how we deal with them from a change perspective. Change resistance and the change curve is another big theme in lean change management. And whatever, and we really will have the opportunity to be responsive to whatever change challenges people bring to the unconference, and what's going to be the best technique or the best tool or approach to consider when dealing with that issue.
Absolutely, and that totally makes sense. One thing that I think was interesting about this conference versus other conferences on management is you have a student discount, which is a bit unusual. We know students are quite poor, so it's nice to give them a discount, but what do you think would attract students to coming to this?
It was something that I picked up on from inquiries that I've had from 2-day workshops. Now, obviously, a 2-day Management 3.0 workshop or Lean Change workshop is going to be quite pricey for students. It's not something that someone can just afford unless they're earning a considerable income or they're sponsored by their organization, even though, that typically a 2-day workshop would not be as expensive as, say, a very corporate system or framework. Nevertheless, students are often ruled out. And I've had requests and I've said, okay, well, we can certainly offer you a student discount, but even then, it doesn't quite meet students' budgetary needs. So I think what will attract them is being management students. I've had people requesting courses from me where they've said that they're totally passionate about this. They've read the Management 3.0 book, they've read Managing for Happiness, they've read all the literature, and they've experimented and they've tried the games, etc. In their work environments or even in their student and university environments. And they're finding that although the courses are updating gradually in the university world, there's nothing quite of this type out there at the moment, and this is what people are really craving for. They're looking for things that are practical, that they're fun, and they're very up to date and based on the very latest science, because universities often lag behind, as we know from the agile world. They often lag behind what's most current in the world out there at the moment.
Absolutely, and that makes sense that this would particularly appeal to the millennials, because both brands are quite colorful, they're quite adapted to the needs required, they're quite based on leveraging and enhancing intrinsic motivation, which definitely suits I'm at the tail end, but my generation of millennials, and that we actually want to love our jobs. So you have to make sure of that, which happens to be the entire theme behind Happy Melly Network, as well as helping people find happiness at work. So it's not just like our parents' generations where we just needed to have a job to make money. We need to make money, but we can also love what we're doing. So it definitely appeals to that audience. It should be interesting to have that perspective join, when that perspective, which is often the junior professionals and office space, especially in the development fields, have their perspective brought in, which isn't often brought in at other conferences. So that's cool.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I'm sure Richard can add from a lean change perspective, from a management 3.0 perspective, and in general, the world of work is changing, particularly from the perspective of anything that in the past could be required humans to do are gradually being overtaken by automation and robots, and anything that is, has up to a certain level of complicatedness is being replaced. And the real difference that's being made now is through people's work as people. So what is different from people that machines can't do? And it's things like really understanding, really having empathy, really understanding what motivates people, really understanding how to communicate in the most effective way that robots certainly can't do and automation certainly can't do. And these are the kind of skills that we really focus on the most, which I think most people are getting in the working world through going outside of the work. If they're finding it themselves, they're finding it through their own personal development, through coaching, through their own personal workshops and that kind of thing, which I think the tertiary education is not really giving people enough of. So this is something that they can come to an conference and really find there and pick up those kind of skills that they probably can't get in their education environment.
Yeah, and the other thing to say is we intend to make this a lot of fun. So I think one of the things we're appreciating now as businesses is that this need to harness the creativity of our workforce. And one of the ways that we do that is by working with serious play or using games to explore serious topics and business problems. And that's going to be a big theme of the Unconference. So certainly in the lean change space, we've got simulations for working in a Kanban style. We've got Lego serious play as a way to explore change challenges. That's going to be part of the day as well.
I think that's very interesting, because it seems like the world of work is moving towards understanding how we learn differently, because we learn through all five senses, and yet until now it's been basically listening to someone telling you what to do. But especially in the software space, it's just with containers, microservices, things like that, it's much more autonomous, where the individual needs to take ownership of his work, and the same happens with any other field. And also what you said about empathy was really interesting, Ryan, because at least, again, because the nature of me writing mostly about software and culture is that empathy is the most required skill that most developers never learn. And that's how you learn about user experience or about your customers in any field. So I think empathy was a really interesting choice. This is fantastic, and I'm definitely getting more excited for the week, or the day, as it were. So why should people be coming to this conference? Besides what you said, how much are they spending, and why should they spend that money?
Ryan.
Put you guys on the hot seat.
Right, so how much are they spending? So £80 early bird ticket, which is really, if you consider all the different tools and practices and techniques that will be on offer on the day, it's extremely good value.
Are you steal?
Deal. The full price, so that's for another 2 weeks until the end of October. After that, full price ticket is £150. And I've forgotten the second part of your question.
Why should they spend that money? Besides that, it's obviously a ridiculously good deal.
It is a ridiculously good deal. Well, I think we've said it already. To add to that, the value that you will get will not just be intellectual. You will get to experience and really grapple with things with people that are in the room that are grappling with things themselves in their day-to-day lives and their day-to-day work. So the kind of insights that people get are often, groundbreaking. They really make they get insights that into themselves and into their challenges that they're facing that are really sometimes you could say life-changing. Definitely. I mean, I've had people in several workshops and games that I've done and exercises that I've done that have said this has totally changed my view of how I see things, and then you'll come back later and say that it's really changed how they work with their colleagues, how they interact, how they communicate, practical tools that they can do that actually start changing their teams and their environments that they work in. So yeah, I would say come along.
Yes, and I think I would echo your point about this is an opportunity to work on your real challenges. So this isn't just about learning new stuff. It's about coming out of the conference and on Monday morning the next week, knowing how you're going to change your approach to this management challenge or this change challenge. That's absolutely our intention for the day, is that people come away with concrete next steps and actions to take forward.
Okay, Richard, you first, but I'm putting you guys on the hot seat again. Which of the practices or exercises or techniques from your brand, Lean Change Management, and then for you, Ryan, Management 3.0, are you most excited to have the possibility of teaching? Because that doesn't mean you'll get to teach it that day, because maybe even though you guys are the organizers, your topics might not get chosen. But that's the fun of the Unconference.
So without a doubt for me, it's culture hacking. So this is the idea that when we're facing a problem in our workspace or our lives or community, whatever it might be, to devise ways to expose the dysfunction of the system and then let the system self-correct. So it's different from the idea of, okay, here's a problem, and asking myself, how am I going to fix it? We don't ask ourselves, how am I going to fix it? We say, how do I expose the system to itself? How do I expose this dysfunction such as the whole system, it becomes so obvious to the whole system that they must change this, that the answer emerges from the system. That's a really exciting idea, and it's a lot of fun to explore different ways that you might achieve that.
It went a little what would be an example, if you can, of a dysfunction in a system?
So Rosa Parks, right? Rosa Parks didn't come up with the civil rights solution for segregation in the South. She just sat in a different part of the bus, right? So she exposed the dysfunction of the system to itself, and then leaders and solutions emerged to correct the system in a way that ultimately ended segregation. So that's a very powerful example of how that's been done in society at large. But we can take inspiration for that and think about how we apply similar approaches in the workplace or in other environments where we're seeking to affect change.
Or in his work, Colin Kaepernick now in the US, the American football player, has now taken the knee and started a movement by just taking a knee during a song. and now started to draw a lot of attention to a lot of issues. So whether you agree with it or not, he definitely drew attention. So that's a perfect example. Thank you for clarifying that for me. And Ryan, what part of Management 3.0 are you most excited to teach or to facilitate? Maybe not teach, lead people in.
Good word, yeah, facilitate. Well, I'm going to mention two, because there's the one that's the crowd pleaser, which a lot of people have experienced already. So I'll mention it anyway, which is moving motivators. People get a lot of insights into themselves, into what motivates them, and particularly what motivates them when times of change are happening. And I've never had anyone in a workshop say that they're not currently going through some kind of change. Everyone's usually going through too much change. And that change really affects their motivation, either in a positive way or in a negative way, or some elements of that change might be increasing their motivation, and some elements of that change might be decreasing their motivation. But until they actually see it and they can actually split out what motivates them, what their different motivators are, what things motivate them more than others, and how those are affected by change, only then can they then have the conversation about what they can do about that to increase their motivation around their change, or at least minimize the decrease in motivation along the lines of that change. So that's the one thing. But the other one I'll mention, because less people have perhaps experienced it, and it's not a core part of their foundation workshop, if people have done the foundation workshop, is improv cards. And that's actually working with pictures. And like you and Richie were saying earlier, the different learning styles that people have. But often our approach to work is very linear. And until we actually start to work with pictures, with stories, only then do we start to paint a much richer tapestry of perhaps reality, and what reality actually is on the ground of a working situation. And when we start to work with pictures, it starts to inspire us to come up with new ideas, fresh ideas, innovate more, and also see things from a different perspective, perhaps not in a very strict, linear, rigid way that we've been seeing them before. So it can really inspire people to open up new ideas about certain challenges that they're having.
Absolutely. And even if it's not the improv cards, you could do drawing, you could do movement, things like that, because we're working outside the area. And for me, if I'm chosen, which I'm totally fine to be a bystander and very comfortable with that, taking notes and finding things to write about so I can share the stories and especially the activities that other people are coming forward and teaching and facilitating that day. Better word, facilitating, because it's much more active learning. For me, it's merit money, which is probably one of the more esoteric, not the most favorite Management 3.0 practice, but something that's really worked for our 100% remote team at Happy Melly, which, if you've heard of kudos are some sort of verbal public acknowledgement. It can be written or it can be verbal, but public acknowledgement or gratitude or thank you of someone. So the next step is to have a sort of gift that you give someone behind it. So every month we get 100 points and we get to give them away. We don't get to ever keep them, and we give them away with a reason or kudo and our value. And then that can turn into money. At some companies, it turns into a very coveted hoodie. At other companies, it turns into an Amazon gift card. At other companies, you get to donate that money. So I'm excited to share our bonus system, and which is completely peer-to-peer recognition, very flat organization, and how it works and sometimes doesn't for our team, as well as other teams I've interviewed, and then to learn more about the other people there, what type of bonus systems they're going to use. But we could be just talking out of our you-know-whats, because we don't know what other people are going to bring and what other people are going to need, and that's the fun of the Unconference, right? Is there anything else? Yeah. And I believe...
it could be so...
Okay.
Well, yeah, and if you show up to this conference, you get the opportunity to facilitate your own session. So if something's burning in you, a technique or an approach or a story you want to share, you get the opportunity to offer that up to the group.
Absolutely. And if you have a problem or a challenge you're facing right now, you can also share that with the group, and maybe someone else will be like, I wasn't even thinking of presenting, but I have a great exercise that might help you. So definitely it's all about engagement, both going back and engaging our employees and teammates, and engaging as a group or a team, because the unconference, I guess all the attendees basically form a team that make decisions together, right? An autonomous collective, to quote Holy Grail. Yeah. So that's fantastic. Is there anything else you want to leave people with? Are there any other speakers lined up yet? Or not speakers, sorry, potential facilitators. Are there anyone else that are lined up to come yet?
Yeah, so we're extremely excited to have Jürgen Appelo as a facilitator. Obviously the founder of the Management 3.0 and the Happy Melly brand. So he's going to be there for people to engage with. And we've also got Andrea, and perhaps Ryan, you can talk more about Andrea. You're obviously in partnership with her.
Sure, yeah, super excited to have Jürgen coming. Session leaders, I think we're calling ourselves. And those could be people that just pitch up on the day and have a session to lead. But it's really great to have the experience that we have in the room. Richard, the first person ever to run a lean change management workshop in the UK, and one of the first, I believe, in the world. Jürgen, of course, who created the whole thing in the first place. And Andrea and myself, we were the first to bring, actually there was one person who since doesn't live in the UK anymore, who ran one workshop before we did, but then we were the first, and pretty much have carried it through for a few years now, running regular workshops and also running the Management meetup group, which was a very idea, and has become a very popular meetup group with over 1,200 members. So a lot of experience in the room. Obviously yourself, Jen, who's working with these techniques daily in the Happy Melly organization. And I'm sure a wealth of experience is going to come into the room from outside as well. So super excited to have the session leaders that we already have.
I was lucky to join about 100 other members of the meetup here in London, which we didn't mention where the event is, but it's here in London. And they did basically kind of a practice mini unconference a couple of weeks ago, which was super fun. And we had, I guess, maybe 6 or 7 asynchronous activities going on that people got to choose, vote on where they wanted to go. People volunteered their ideas, and there was a lot of activity. And then, of course, being mostly coaches, we presented at the end what we learned from it. And it was just a really good way to learn new activities and have a lot of fun. So that was great. Okay, I think our time's up today. I thank you guys both very much for coming and on the video call. And just a reminder, the Melly Camp, the first of many, hopefully, Melly Camps and unconferences is December 8th here in London. You can sign up at mellycamp.co.uk, sorry, MELLYCAMP.co.uk. And we really hope to see you there soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jen. Bye.